All right, guys, we're coming to you again. We have a very special guest with us. I think you're a colonel or former Air Force colonel and
I'm a retired colonel, yes.
retired colonel. This will be cool. Um, Roxane Towner-Watkins did I say it?
Towner-Watkins, yeah,
Towner.
Towner-Watkins. I'm dyslexic, but I still have to read stuff, so I apologize. But
that's fine.
I'm very honored that you came on. I've been reading about the rat lines out of Germany for years, and my cousin Collin has led me down the path of what you're talking about. It is just absolutely fascinating. But I was reading your bio, and I was very impressed. I live next to Air Force bases. I've been on Air Force bases, and I was very the idea that you were one of the first female AP mechanics, and I tried to pursue that myself in the private sector is very impressive. So, um, and you want to lead with that, or how would you like to go about this?
Well,
Or
I mean, I can share a little bit about my history, because I think
uh,
it's obviously relevant to the topic. So, I joined the Air Force right out of high school. I did it kind of on a
okay,
dare from my dad, who was completely convinced that I wouldn't last 3 days in the military because I was a little rebellious at the time, and he was dead serious. He actually thought I couldn't do it.
oh,
So,
cool,
little did he know that the entire time I was in basic training, all I heard my dad laughing at me when I told him that I had talked to an Air Force recruiter. And, 30 years later, uh, he was around long enough for me to pin on colonel, and, it was a truly, an amazing journey, those 30 years that I spent in the Air Force, and as you said, at the time, the aircraft maintenance had just been, opened to females, and that's what I wanted to do. I had spent my childhood being a shadow to my dad as a long distance, truck driver, so
yeah,
I knew everything about diesel engines. I was really good, um, uh, at anything maintenance, anything mechanical, and so I loved the 8 years that I spent in aircraft maintenance, 6 on active duty and 2 years as a certified AMP working at Stanford Field in Louisville, Kentucky at the FedEx overnight hub. And I
well, that's
did
cool.
that while I was on a ROTC scholarship, at Indiana University getting my commission. And so I spent 22 years as an officer living all
Mm,
over the world, doing all kinds of very interesting jobs. And what I realized as I started this most recent research project several years ago is God's hand was guiding me through my entire Air Force career because He put me in places that are directly relevant to Operation Gladio
Mm.
unbeknownst to me. For example, I just mentioned that I was at Stanford Field at, UPS. The
okay,
maintenance contractor that I actually worked for was Evergreen, and I just recently found out, like 3 years ago, that Evergreen was a CIA company that, their aircraft were actually used in, the Contra missions,
oh,
drugs,
really?
yes. So, it was shocking to me to realize that I'd actually worked for a company, but I tell this story, my first day on the job, I was assigned a trainer, obviously, because 'cause I'm a brand new A&P, although I had 6 years experience, and we went into one of the 727s, and you go up after they offload all the cargo and you debrief the pilots, and, you fix any minor maintenance things. We didn't do major maintenance things at night. Um, a lot of us had to come in the next morning if we had a hard break aircraft, to fix it, but so I'm walking up and you go into the cockpit, to get their little metal box that has the um, maintenance sheets in it because 'cause they'll write it up in flight.
Yeah,
And so he's having a conversation with the pilots, and I'm just kinda listening, and I'm looking at the cockpit door. And on the cockpit door, there's all of these plastic document protectors with these sheets in them. Now, I'm used to being on military aircraft. We don't have anything like that. So I'm just kind of scanning. There's like 4 of them on the door, and I'm kind of scanning and I'm looking at it. It's Colombia, Nicaragua, Costa Rica. And so when we got
Oh,
to the
man.
truck, I asked the guy, what are those things on the door? And he says, those are just flight clearances for those countries. And I just kinda tucked it away. It was like, it's UPS. They fly all over the world. We had aircraft coming in from Hong Kong, from everywhere. And I start doing this research and I'm like, "Holy crap. Those were drug and weapons aircraft going down there,"
Wow.
because, again, this is in the '80s. I was
Icon
there.
yeah,
Yeah, this was the
Iran
mid-'80s
Contra,
when
yeah.
all of that crap was going on.
That's pretty
So
cool.
yeah, and one other big milestone, there's lots of little ones, but I love sharing this piece too. So, just for the audience to understand what Operation Gladio is, it is a NATO operation
Uh-huh.
that encompasses what is generically called stay-behind units, which were modeled off of Nazi werewolf units. And
Oh,
they were designed with caches of weapons buried, usually in wooded areas, so that if you were overran, militarily, supposedly, the people could fall in on these caches of weapons and use them against whoever the enemy forces were. Unfortunately, they were only ever used for domestic terror attacks by NATO countries on their own people.
oh,
And
wow.
so this went on post World War II up until it's still going on today, but it was exposed for the first time because it was highly classified, ran out of NATO, and for the first time it was ever talked about publicly was on the 2nd of August 1990 when the Italian prime minister went into Congress into their Senate and acknowledged for the first time that Operation Gladio, and that's the specific name for Italy, but it's kind of generically used as a term for all of these stay behinds. He went into the Senate. There had been prosecutors, reporters, judges murdered anytime anybody got near Operation Gladio, the
Okay.
information or exposing it. So there's lots of dead bodies. In Italy, they called it the years of lead. And so I arrived at the Rome airport on the 2nd of August, 1990, the very
Oh,
day that the prime minister for a 3-year assignment in southern Italy. And so I lived there and there's all of this chaos. I remember one time going to work and there was like a safety bulletin that had been issued for the base because 3 in I was in southern Italy on the hill at San Vito
okay.
Air Station. So in Sicily, there had been 5 legal people, I think it was a judge and 4 prosecutors, mowed down on the courthouse steps after all of this information started coming out because they started prosecuting people.
I think I remember hearing about that when I was a kid. 'Cause
So,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah, I heard all of this stuff going on, but I don't speak Italian, so I did not realize that this entire network in Italy was called Operation Gladio because my landlord talked about years of lead, which I remember hearing them talk about, but I didn't know the 2 were associated with each other until I started doing this research. So, I feel like God led me to this journey. I've always been an avid reader. I probably own like 600 books, and I've only ever read nonfiction. So,
Oh,
it's something that I enjoy researching, kind of on my own. And so, I found over on True Social a whole group of people that were very interested in real history
Hmm.
and kind of had a lot of assistance at the beginning with people, and then we moved over to X so we could do spaces, and it's just grown from there.
that is pretty cool. Um, I live here in Southern New Mexico, so I've been going to all the German POW camps, so, I mean, and seeing history in the past, I mean, being present for it would be totally mind blowing, and not even like crossing paths with all that stuff and not even realizing it.
and not
That's
having
pretty cool.
a clue.
Yeah, it's almost like now everything that was unseen is now kind of coming out into the open, and we're all now a part of the psychodrama, is what it feels like, whether we like it or
So,
not. So,
that was the next question I had for you. So you have your pretty good career, 30 years. That's a good stretch. What c- what was like, I guess for lack of a better word, what was like your red pill moment, or what was your eye opening, or I guess you would say?
Well, it was a slow process, actually. I was completely bought in on everything. I retired in 2008, and I was medically retired due to a anthrax vaccine injury.
Oh, okay.
And so I had 2 kids, one just started junior high and one had started high school. I have an older daughter, and for the first time in my career, I got to be a mom. I was a single parent, and I really enjoyed kinda the decompression, if you will. My last job, I was a wing commander, and I had detachments all over the world. I had them in Japan and Germany, and so I was on the road all the time. And so I just really enjoyed being with my, kids, and I made the mistake of turning on Glenn Beck at 5 o'clock, um, and then became an addict to his chalkboards, and I have to tell you, it was very devastating to me because being a military officer, you cannot engage in politics. It's not that you don't vote. You do that on your own time, and you are a commander to everybody, and there's both parties represented in every unit, and so you just stay apolitical, um,
Yeah.
because you're very rarely ever assigned in your home state, so you don't get involved in local elections because you can't vote in local elections. So, excuse me, um I started getting involved, and talking to people, and I realized, based on Glenn Beck's little chalkboard tutorials, that there was a lot of really nefarious things going on in our country, and if you remember, that's kind of at the beginning of the Tea Party and
Yeah.
the exposure of Acorn and them interfering in elections back then, and James O'Keefe's, exposure, and
Yeah.
so it was like you kinda get this we we joined the military with the understanding that you may not come home. I mean, I
Yeah.
deployed, um, and to know that the people in the United States as citizens were not paying attention, both at the local level and at the national level, to safeguard what we have here, supposedly a republic, which I would argue we haven't had in over 100 years. Um,
I would agree with you. Yes. Yeah.
so it was very disturbing to me, and that made me want to do much more reading about how we got to that place. And so about, I don't know, 3.5 years ago, time has flown by, I stumbled across an author by the name of Anthony Sutton. And Anthony Sutton wrote 3 books. His first book was The Wall Street and the Bolsheviks.
Oh, yeah.
And basically, he was at the time when he started doing the research, he worked at the Hoover Institute, but they would not print that book, and he quit. So that made me wanna read it all the more. And
Yeah.
so his premise in that book is that Wall Street and the City of London funded the Bolshevik Revolution, and they did. So the Bolshevik Revolution basically gave us communism.
Yeah.
And
That's when Lenin got released by London and went in to help him on World
and
War II. And
Trotsky was
yeah.
kept in New York City.
Oh,
Did you know that?
I did
No.
not know that. No.
Yes. He was kept in New York City in a flat that had, I mean, this is very early, just after the turn of the century in the early 1900s. He had a refrigerator, which no one had. Um, he was chauffeured around everywhere. And so you can tell there was a lot of money behind him being kept in New York City, and then they paid for his passage and gave him like $10,000, which at the time was unheard of, to travel back to Russia. And
Yeah.
so then he wrote a book called Wall Street and Hitler. And the same people were funding Hitler's rise to power. So that made me want to back up a little bit and find out what philosophy is behind these nefarious players. Well, you find all
That
kinds of different things that link them together, like Skull and Bones at Yale and a thing called the Pilgrim
cool.
Society, which is both in London and in New York, primarily. I mean, Pilgrim
And
Society.
not a lot of people talk about that one.
No, almost no one talks about it, and it's huge. So I read about them, and then you get to the pinnacle for Operation Gladio, and that's the Fabian Society. I'd never
Mhm.
even heard
Oh,
of them.
really?
So the Fabian Society in London had all of the brainiacs. They go on to create the London School of Economics. They're behind the Rhodes Scholar program. They're behind a lot of really nefarious things, to include Zionism. And you
Really?
find out that, yeah, you find out that they said back in the late 1800s that their goal was a new world order and that we were going to have 3 world wars in order to create the institutions that would eventually lead the world government, and that they were going to break them up into sections. We were going to have a pan America with the US in charge of it. We were going to have a pan Europe with Germany in charge of it. And the British Empire was going to be left intact. There was some
Of
argument
course.
at the
Yeah.
beginning of whether we were going to have Britain and then let the rest of the things kind of shake out. But they eventually decided that there would be a British Empire still. And Germany would be in charge of pan Europe. And then there's going to be a pan Asia. And eventually, which some people argue why Turkey was in NATO, Turkey was going to lead the pan Arabic area. And notably missing was Africa. And they tell you why, because they were going to be the slave labor for everybody else.
So
You know,
can I get
I've
a
often
clarify?
wondered.
Can I
I've
quick
read about that, and
clarifying?
I never heard. I'd always wondered why they never talked about Africa, and that makes sense.
So quick
Yeah.
clarifying question about that. So are you referring to the supposed, well, there's the Albert Pike letter that it's kind of a legend because no one has seen it? Or did you
No.
substantiate this some way? Okay, how did you? Because I
So
believe this, but
So there's a whole bunch of books. Cynthia Chung's book, um, it's the Black Empire in which the sun never sets. She basically takes you through this entire timeline. But there's additional books. There's a book, as a matter of fact, I'm reading like my 3rd book on the Fabian Society, and they basically all kind of say the same thing. Um, they there's a book called The Third Way. And that was fundamental to me. I believe Joseph Farrell wrote that book. Basically, what he does is he takes the premise that Anthony Sutton creates with the communism being labeled as the far left and Nazism being labeled as the far right, which
Yeah.
is completely ridiculous. They're both
Yeah. Yeah.
dictatorship and they're all about total government control, as opposed to anarchy, which is really at the other end of that continuum with a republic just outside of anarchy, a small central government.
Yeah.
That's the actual continuum. So Nazism and communism are on the same end of that scale. But
Yeah, as a
but
historian myself, like an amateur historian, reading about that is always frustrated me when they say it's a right-wing concept. It's
correct.
not. Yeah.
No, it's a false um narrative, it's propaganda, it's a false narrative. But what the third way makes very clear, and Hegel came from this whole Fabian concept as well, and you probably have heard about the Hegelian dialect. So you have this um, continuum that they basically present to you, that there's this way on the left and there's this way on the right, but they use terrorism and fear on both sides in
Hmm.
order to push us into the middle and control us. So we're all getting on the cattle car. It's just a matter of which way you're coming from. The people that are in the streets in Minneapolis that everybody likes to label as leftists, they're getting on the same cattle car
Yeah.
as the people that are over here on the right, who's supposedly standing up against them while using the same apparatus just over here.
Yeah.
And that's where Operation Gladio becomes very interesting, because they conducted terrorism to get what they label as far right military dictatorships in power, while at the same time you basically have the same magic strings up here creating the far left radical terrorist as well. And it's not lost on anybody that as soon as the Soviet Union, their far left boogeyman, fell in 1991, that we immediately jumped to the radical Islamic terrorist, which supposedly is somehow on the right, in order to keep us in this perpetual state of fear, in order to keep manipulating us.
What's really interesting is I was a commercial truck driver. I would listen. I'm dyslexic, so I listen to a lot of books. They actually have a book written by Michael Crichton called State of Fear, and he goes after the environmental aspect of it, and it's based off the premise that we have to be in continual state of fear to control. And it's like right now the green is the new red, and all. Yeah,
Yes.
so I think it's very interesting, and I thought it was cool you brought up Glenn Beck, because he's a really good author, and part of the reason I started looking into this stuff was because of the Overton Window. He wrote the book, The Overton Window,
I've read it. I have it.
and then he wrote Eye of Moloch, which blew my mind, and then I read Agenda 21, and I can't remember, but they have the follow-up book, and yeah, Glenn Beck has completely reshaped my view on a lot of the backside of the what's going on in the government. And part of the thing I'm trying to find is I think that the Eye of Moloch, there is a person out there. I'm kind of like trying to figure out, is there really a person that's kind of like pulling the strings like that book was? But that's what kind of started me looking into all this stuff.
So I wouldn't say there's a person. So when I first started basically doing this research, every time I would make a post, I get all of these crazy bots that would come in going, oh, it's all the Jews. Oh, it's all the bankers. Oh, it's all of this. Oh, it's all of that. Oh, it's all the communists. Everything was, oh, it's all CCP. And so we coined a term called the International Syndicate. It is
Okay.
a criminal syndicate that is not made up of one person. It's a body of people. As a matter of fact, that's why they coined the term roundtable. And basically, what you can think of is there is a table, and then there's a ring of subordinate tables. And those tables look like the CFR, the RIIA, which is their counterparts in London, the Committee of 300 committee, those types of things, Club of Rome, all of those are subordinate. The Bilderbergs, those are subordinate tables that everybody sits at. So I by calling it the international syndicate, people need to understand that it is not just the bankers. There are people that are in that upper echelon of controllers that come from all walks of life. You have industrialists, you have bankers.
Yeah.
So what I have determined, if I could do just kind of a visual model,
Oh
is
yeah. No. Yeah.
if you go back to the 1600s, the 1700s, we're all very familiar with the East and West Indies, of the British Empire, of the Dutch Empire. So embedded in those companies that basically went around the world and found countries, took over those countries, and colonized them for slave
Okay.
labor and products of whatever was their specialty. Well, in order to do that, you needed a letter of marque from the country that sanctioned your voyage, usually from the Netherlands or from England in the case that we're going to use. And you needed a paramilitary force in order to subdue the population. You also needed an intelligence capability to scout out the area before you came ashore. So
Okay.
these companies, these East and West Indies companies paid for their own intelligence and their own paramilitary. Well, after World War II, everything changed because for the first time in the history of our country and most other countries, you had a standing military. You
Yes.
also all had a central intelligence corporation. Well, what was required in order to have that happen? Well, you had to have a central bank, you had to have the Federal Reserve, and you had to be able to tax individual citizens to pay for this crap.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Yeah.
all of that happens, and after World War II, the second of the planned world wars, you're going to have these oligarchs who, from a balance sheet purpose, I have a master's degree in business, so I think that way. From a balance sheet perspective, I just offloaded a huge chunk of my cost. I don't have to pay for private intelligence, and I don't have to pay for a private military. I just transitioned that off my balance sheet, off my cost, onto the taxpayers of all the countries. Now, they're still gonna work for me,
Yeah.
and I've made the argument, and I can give you lots of examples, that the CIA has never worked for the American government, ever. They don't take orders from the American government. If they get a president that's in the club, then they may tell him what they're gonna do, but they don't care if he buys into it or not, and JFK is the best example of that, who
Yeah.
didn't buy
Well, yeah.
into it, and they just eliminated him. So, there if you see this kind of organization evolving, and then what happened after 9/11 and the skyrocketing of private military contractors in the military and private intelligence capability. So think about this. If you start looking at a lot of the private military companies, do you know who they're all owned by now?
BlackRock?
Collectively, private investment. They're owned by the same oligarchs.
Okay.
So not only did the taxpayers after World War II start paying for this apparatus, now the CIA and the Secretary or Department of War now takes our tax dollars that they're given and contracts out huge chunks of these missions to private companies all owned by those same people. So now they're making profits off of the same apparatus. So what they had as an expense is now a profit center for them.
Okay.
Big profit.
Big, but only if you
Billion.
have war.
Yeah.
That's the reason
Only
we've been
if
at war
you
the whole
have
time.
destabilization.
Yeah.
So do you think anybody is going to have peace as an agenda?
No.
No.
Not with that business model.
Not with that
I heard
business model.
I met some people that were I had a friend of mine. His name was Bob. He had a lot of connections because he was he supplied arms to the Rhodesian War. I think they had was it the Scylla Scouts there? So I've met some Scylla Scouts, and I've met some Air America guys, and they all say the same thing, that the CIA has never been in business for intelligence for the people. They've all said that they are in the business of working for these oligarchs.
They work for the international syndicate.
Yeah.
And what's worse, because after World War II and NATO, it's every Western intelligence service is effectively linked up,
Yeah.
is interoperable, is at least from where I'm standing. I'm sure, obviously, go ahead. What do you think of that?
Not just Western.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So most people never talk about the KCIA, which was the Korean CIA modeled after
hmm
off of our CIA, and the
Okay.
link to South Korea. Um, what's not in the history books is after World War II, the agreement both in Vietnam and in Korea was a unified country that had previously been a unified country that had been invaded and controlled by Japan during the war.
Yeah.
And Korea had been a colony of Japan even before that for like 35 years. So the going in position on paper was those two countries were going to have unified elections after the war. What they did is a typical scenario after a war, in that they assigned sectors of responsibility for the after war cleanup, like getting rid
Like
of all the straggler Japanese and all of that stuff, and kind of reconstituting, because there was a lot of bombing and stuff like that, kind of reconstituting the infrastructure, and then you pull out. Well, in Korea, the northern sector of the peninsula was under the auspices of the Soviet Union, and the southern sector was under the auspices of the US.
yeah, okay.
So we want the entire thing under our control.
Mhm.
And during this period of time, these stay behinds mysteriously start popping up all over the southern sector in Korea. And
Okay.
we have a particular guy who sat out the war outside of Korea that we want to bring in and be in charge. Well, there's nobody in Korea that's going to vote for him because he wasn't there. Him, Senior, was there the entire time fighting for the country of Korea, but we don't like him because he's a nationalist. He was not a communist, he was a nationalist. And he has a very strong, just like Ho Chi Minh over in Vietnam. Ho Chi Minh shows up in France with he had his own OSS officers assigned to him, Ho Chi Minh did. He had his
Okay.
entire detachment of pre-CIA CIA. And he was the warlord in Vietnam kicking Japanese butts.
Okay.
So he has his OSS officers help him draft a constitution for a united Vietnam. That's not going to happen, because when he goes to Paris, they all laugh at him. He's a nationalist. He wants France out of Vietnam. France wants to come back to Vietnam. And
They want
because
to
they had
pick up where they left
been
off.
a
Yeah.
French colony.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, no, we want our freedom. That's what we fought this whole freaking war for. We want our freedom. And France and the, Dulles brothers, they're like, yeah, that's not going to happen. We're going to go ahead and let France come back in. And they did. And Ho Chi Minh was like, over my dead body. And he started fighting the French. So just to show you how evil these people are, in Vietnam, this is not widely known by anyone.
Hmm.
The Catholic Church had been under um, Vietnam being a French colony, the Catholic Church had been everywhere in Vietnam. So there was quite a few I mean, not number wise, percentage wise, maybe like less than 20% of the entire country, but still a lot of Catholics. And there was a lot of Catholic missionaries in Vietnam. So in the northern area where Ho Chi Minh was, the CIA immediately started after World War II an effort to get the Catholics to migrate south. Now, these are people that have been in villages for hundreds of years and have never left their village. So how do you get them out? Well, you make Ho Chi Minh into the devil, and you tell everybody that he has connections to the Soviet Union, and all of their kids are going to be kidnapped and taken to the Siberia.
Mhm.
And they even ran psychological operations on the northern area, telling them that he was going to kidnap the women and cut babies out of their bellies. This was done through the Catholic Church. So the
Wow.
Catholic Church helps the intelligence agencies working on this move 1 million people out of the north into the south. Why? Because they want Diem as president and he's Catholic. So we're going to get a whole bunch of
Mm.
people down in South Vietnam to make it look like it's a Catholic entity when it was not, nor will it ever be a Catholic majority country. And this operation was done. They put them on airplanes and boats. These people had never been out of there. And then, of course, they create the Phoenix program to monitor all of them. They set up fake villages and they have checkpoints, kind of just like we see in Minneapolis, where you have to check your ID that they gave you. They
Yeah.
created a computer database to monitor these people. And then they use them against the Viet Cong in order to tell tell on everyone that was sympathetic to the North, who basically were nationalists that just wanted their freedom.
Mhm.
So real quick, one of the major things that Gladio also exposes is like one of the things I try to bring up is if a mob or if the mafia is allowed to exist in your country, one, they exist because they're allowed to exist.
Correct.
Period. There's just that should be just common sense, but it isn't. People think they operate like it's like crime drama movies, like that's real.
Mussolini got rid of them in Italy.
Right. How real do you think it is that Russia and China are killing off their Praetorians or getting rid of them? Do you think that's actually happening?
Yes, I do.
I do too, but it's kind of, it's hard to believe that it's actually happening, you know. Um,
Patrolling them and also their uh, gladios too? Are they also searching them out?
it's the same
Oh,
thing,
well,
kind of. But go ahead.
yeah. Well, so just to be clear, I
Yeah.
use the term Gladio in a paramilitary capability standpoint, and that's different than the
Um,
Praetorian Guard. The Praetorian
okay.
Guard are the Alan Dulleses and the John Foster Dulleses. They're the people that control the paramilitary because you have three elements of power. You have economic, you have political, and you have military. And every one of
Okay.
them has a para associated with it. You have para-politics, you have paramilitary, and you have para-economic, like economic warfare. And
Okay.
so the people that conduct these para things are kind of the level below the Praetorian Guard. The Praetorian Guard are the skull and bones and those people that bridge across. They go to the Rhodes Scholars and then they deploy back to their home countries to have this layer of coordination, which is how this has been allowed to exist for so long.
And most
And
of these
that's
people just think they're managers or they're just doing, high level management jobs, like because there has to be a lot of them to run something of this size. I mean, their
There's a
whole
I want to say
companies.
I'm really glad because I think in linear thought, I try to have a beginning and an end, and I've tried to find that where that link is and kind of just filled that piece of the puzzle in for me. So I really appreciate. I've been looking for kind of understanding that for like the last 6 or 7 months, and I really appreciate you talk. That
So
makes a lot of sense.
I think that same way. Obviously, being in aircraft maintenance, I'm a troubleshooter. If something down here doesn't work, you need to follow the line up to wherever the source of the electrical current is or whatever. So my
Yeah,
brain thinks
yeah.
that way. I also spent a tour at the tech school for aircraft maintenance. I was personally, while I was on active duty, in environmental systems, and our tech school taught us one of the things is you have to go through all of this. I mean, it's like a teacher's degree by the time you get master instructor during your tour there. And so I my brain organizes material in a completely different way that I think most people do that haven't had that training. So
Yeah.
teaching electrical principles to 18-year-olds is fairly a difficult process. And
I
so
can
I'm a conceptual person. I want to like when you're talking about resistance in an electrical line and the amount of flow of current, to me, whenever I was reading in the textbook that when I was going through that school, my brain immediately pictured a straw, and the amount of the bigger the straw, the harder you have to suck on the straw in order to get the material through it.
Yeah.
And that's just
I
the way
thought it that way too. Yeah.
very easy to convey ideas when you think about stuff like that,
Well,
being a conceptual person.
I have a degree in automotive engineering. It's only associate's degree because I have a hard time sitting still. But yeah, I can't believe you said it like that because that's how I thought of it when I was going
Yes,
through electrical diagnostics, and so
yes,
that's pretty cool. Yeah, like a straw or like thinking of it as a river, with
yes,
current and yeah,
yes.
yeah.
It flows the
That's
path of least resistance.
yeah,
Corey,
that's pretty cool. I like the correlation there. I mean, it really like helps me have equilibrium, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Corey, you got any questions or?
Well, because of my theological background, yeah, and what Ben was talking about, Ben not Yahoo. I think I said his name right. Yeah, I'm
Benjamin Netanyahu.
putting together, Rome conquered Israel, and then they fought back, uh, or I think they're still fighting, according to Ben, and they just called the United States the next Rome and that kind of stuff. And it seems like there's this old blood that's running through centuries, and they're just still fighting out a battle that they're hoping to survive long enough that the other side doesn't. And it seems like it just continues on, and utilizing these different tactics and forces and stuff is just things that are escalating, because with new technology, you come out with new weaponry and all that kind of stuff. But it seems like it's the same thought pattern almost.
So let me give you another concept
Yes.
in Operation Gladio. It's called strategy of tension.
Oh, okay.
And if you look up the strategy of tension, what you're going to find is what basically I was referring to as the left and the right in the rabble rousing and the terrorism. And they use a strategy of tension in order to manipulate people.
Hmm.
Now,
Yeah.
I have a wonderful husband who has to listen to me talk about all of this stuff all the time, and I make his brain hurt. And he's an electrical contractor, by the way. So we get to talk about all that stuff too. And
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
came up one day a couple of years ago and he says, "Hey, do you remember that show we used to watch called Get Smart?" And
Oh,
I
Yeah.
look at him and I kind of roll my eyes and I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm kind of busy." And he goes, "Do you remember what those organizations were called in the show?" And I'm like, "No." And he said it was called Chaos and Control. So think about
yeah.
this. They
Yeah.
create chaos so they can control us. That's the very definition of strategy of tension. Well,
Mhm.
after World
Well,
War
yeah,
II,
that's what the Nazis did to get into power. They created tension, and then they were going to be the saviors that came in and saved it.
So
Yeah.
after World War II,
Yeah.
the entire world maps were redrawn, right? Boundaries. We created countries out of nothing. We just
Yeah.
redrew. I mean, we changed the names of countries. Persia became Iran. Mesopotamia became Iraq, blah, blah, blah. All right. So we've got a whole new map. And there were things like Israel created after World War II. So if you are sitting at the big table and you want to strategically place tension points around the world, that at the flip of a coin, you can have instant war, because war is how we're going to control people. We are going to have centers of tension that can erupt at a moment's notice out of nowhere. So if you think about where those places are today, they're very interesting, and all were created after World War II, like Israel. You control the entire Middle East out of one little country. Well, let's think of another one that no one ever talks about. And it goes to the heart of Operation Gladio. If you're going to have weapon caches all over the world, that's going to cost a lot of money, isn't it? If you're going to train people on how to be assassins and torture people and kidnap people and use C4 explosives, all in these caches, that's going to cost a lot of money. They're going to have to travel to the training. Where are you going to get that money? Because this is all covert. This is not funded out of an appropriated line, because on paper they don't exist. Well, the most profitable business in the world after World War II was narcotic trafficking, opium.
Yeah.
Where's all that at after World War II?
Fe-
Oh, it's
A lot
over
of
here
it's
in South China. And
yeah,
so you have
Vietnam.
this
Yeah.
entire OSS presence in China. And they're helping Chiang Kai-shek, the warlord in South China, the KMT army, fight not only the Japanese, but he's also fighting Mao. And so the OSS helps them in every way. Well, one of his military advisors at the time was a guy by the name of Paul Helliwell. Paul Helliwell is basically, he was in the OSS, although he also was in the military somehow. And he is watching Chiang Kai-shek fund his KMT army selling opium. So he gets on the phone to Alan Dulles and goes, "Hey, you know that Gladio thing you want to set up out of NATO? I got a great way to pay. Let's capture the opium trade coming out of Southeast China." And all at once, you have Claire Chennault flying the hump in Burma, which we were told was strictly humanitarian, except for that's where they moved Chiang Kai-shek when Mao won, was out of Burma. And all of these Flying Tiger aircrafts are coming back and forth with all these drugs on them, but we were told it was all about food. Well,
Yeah, I've
Burma,
heard that before.
yeah, Burma got a little annoyed because there's all of this crap going on in Burma. So the Burmese decided they didn't want Chiang Kai-shek living in Burma anymore. Well, there's this little island off the coast of China called Formosa. We now call it Taiwan. So
Yeah.
they decide they're going to take the Chinese general and put him on a Chinese island and change the name. Well, as soon as Chiang Kai-shek gets to now Taiwan overnight, the Formosans, who had just gotten rid of the Japanese, they don't want him there. They don't want to be the opium capital of the world. And so there was a resistance that immediately sprung up to fight back. Unfortunately for the Formosans, they all got killed that tried to resist, because the KMT army was really good at what they did. Not just growing opium and controlling it, but at killing people. And so what I didn't know until I started this, and again, I spent 30 years. I have went through just about every professional military education. I have a degree, a master's degree from Air War College, supposedly in world history about military.
Uh-huh.
I had no
Yeah.
idea that when Chiang Kai-shek took over Taiwan at the behest of the CIA, that he immediately declared martial law, and they lived under martial law for about 40 years.
Oh.
That's 4 and a 0. And the KMT during this time transitioned to a political party, and they created a thing called the Taiwanese Political Warfare Cadre, which was a school that taught basically terrorists how to label themselves as a political party. Hello, El Salvador, because this is exactly what the death squad did down there. You call yourself a political party, and
Mm.
then the CIA will represent you in the United States as a political Democrat party, democracy, and all about democracy, but it's a death squad, just like the KMT Army was. But as long as you call yourself a political party, you get foreign aid.
Mm.
That's
Oh.
kind of they've, like, totally wrapped us around this axle of supporting some really bad people over the course of our history with USAID and the National Endowment for Democracy and
Mm.
all these other democracy bullshit things. I've never seen any of these democracy, that results in a regime change ever install an actual democracy. They use money set aside for democracy, but they use it to install military dictators. And just like Chiang Kai-shek was. So
Yeah, I when
there's a few other
when I was
hot
looking.
spots around, but you will notice that every time that we need money
Mm.
generated, one has this flare up over here, or Israel has this flare up over here. And so I'm convinced that that's by design.
Oh.
Oh yeah, I've thought that same thing because when I started looking to the USAID and all these you know the institutes of peace and all this other stuff, everything they back doesn't lead into democracy, like you were saying, and there's the other link I was looking for as well. I mean, you've solved a couple pieces of a puzzle tonight for me, so
So they name things very Orwellian. The Institute of Peace should be called the Institute of War. Um,
The Albert
yeah,
Einstein
and
Institute.
the Albert Einstein Institute. That's one of my favorite finds.
Yeah.
what's that?
It's
I
No, I
haven't
learned
heard of
that from
that.
you. That was insane. That's so funny.
so the Albert Einstein Institute is another CIA front, funded primarily through USAID, which is itself a CIA front. And the Albert Einstein Institute was created by a guy by the name of Gene Sharp and a special forces colonel by the name of Kelby. And basically, what they did was they designed a curriculum for brown shirts, for lack of a better word. They're street thugs that peacefully protest um, in regime change operations. They were
Okay.
present in Ukraine, they were present in Bosnia, they were present in Georgia, in all of these different countries when they need people out in the streets. And weirdly enough, if you go to their website, 'cause it's there, they have video after video of the lead student peaceful protester bragging about how they overthrew their government.
Hmm.
Okay.
So does that
Is
mean
that
we
how
have
they're?
brown shirts here in Minneapolis,
Oh, absolutely.
Portland, Chicago?
So,
Because that's only makes sense to me.
absolutely, they're all trained anarchists or
Mhm.
insurgents trying to overthrow the government.
I think
And it's
Minnesota
Okay.
was the first
the
place
same.
Antifa popped up. I'm sorry.
Antifa's another element of it.
I just meant that Minnesota seems to be one of the gestational pods for a lot of this stuff. Like
So,
they seem
in order
very
for the
friendly.
yeah, well, in order for this to work, you have to have government complicity.
Yeah.
So you're going to find these things in areas where the police force is complicit, the mayor is complicit, Hopefully the governor is complicit. You have to have all echelons of buy-in into this in order for it to not be just a simple. You can't do that in Florida. At no
No.
level,
No.
you may get buy-in from a mayor in Tampa or Orlando because we have weirdos there. But the county, no. The state, no. And if you do not have that layered of protection in order for these people to thrive and commit this chaos, it doesn't happen. You have to
Well,
have complicit
yeah.
judges, everything.
What I find interesting is you say that, and I live here in New Mexico, and we have that problem here in New Mexico.
I was
Exactly.
gonna
do.
say.
They're stacking all those stuff, and they're getting
Yes.
ready. You can see them getting ready to push their agenda real hard here. The only
Even the
thing that
kids.
slows them down, what's slowing them down is New Mexico has such really short legislative sessions, and under our constitution, they have to finish all the government's work before they can pass bills or anything. That's the only thing slowing them down, and they've tried to. And I don't want to get caught up in that kind of politics, but you say that, and you see that in a lot of these things. I grew up in California, and we had the same problem there too, and
But
that's
coming
a failed state.
but
So
coming back to New Mexico, so this is where I live, and I got a couple of kids, and my son went down to one of those protests where I live, and they were all grade school and high school for the majority. They're busing these kids in, and with signs of negativity to the government and ICE and border and all that kind of stuff. I was like, wait a minute, who authorized this? If I was a parent of a grade school kid and I found this out, I'd be like, well, I'm going to make some multi-million dollars off you guys because A, I wouldn't sign a permission slip for this. B, my kids belong in school where they need to learn. Well, they're learning how to be Antifa or whatever else. And it doesn't make
You
any
don't
sense except for now.
You don't have to be a parent. Your tax dollars are paying for that. They're paying for the teachers.
Yeah, they
They're
are.
paying for the electricity in that school. Yeah,
yeah.
I would be on the front lines. There's no way that shit would be happening in my county.
Well, the thing is like I've tried to get involved locally here with the only one that makes sense is the Republicans, and they are so out of touch with what's really going on. You go out on the streets, and it's like you see high schoolers and you see geriatrics, just like the old baby boomers, geriatrics out there, and there's no in between. There's like really young, maybe young college, and there's geriatrics, and we can't even bridge the gap with the people we're talking here like I went to the pre-primary convention or whatever, and they just don't understand how to get the message down, and it's like, why don't you have the young Republicans? Why aren't you? I'm trying to pull, and no one wants to. It's like the only thing I say is it's preordained and it's rigged because you're trying to pull these sources in to try to coordinate all these people to try to get the message, and they just kill it. So it's
That's why we're
Yeah,
on the
I-
internet.
yeah.
Yeah, you have to organize outside of the approved process in order to get anything done. That's my
Well-
experience. But I do offer my time to anyone, generally conservative and GOP functions, to go and speak, to explain to people what is going on. And if you do not get out and do something about it, we are going to lose our country.
Oh yeah.
And I have plenty of examples of both the good and the bad. The resistance in countries that had been attacked by the CIA. They've tried to kill the Burkina Faso guy several times, the French has, because
Yeah.
he's a nationalist and he's taking care of his country. And so there are successful ways of countries to fight back against this international syndicate's attempt to take over. But there's also a lot to be learned from the people that failed as well.
like Gaddafi.
And that's one thing that a lot of people don't talk about is how do we flip this? How do we move from being overtaken, overrun to being victorious or thriving in uh, speaking out against or however that looks as populace.
So what's interesting about that, and I have pissed off a lot of very well-known people for saying this, I don't care. The proverbial right, which is a fake right, um,
Knew it.
they basically have their little fiefdoms and they
Yeah.
make lots of money, like CPAC. Um, and they do absolutely nothing on the ground level to get people in what I think everybody calls the MAGA movement elected to office.
Yeah.
They sit
Yeah.
on millions and millions of dollars and they do no grassroots efforts at all. And
Well,
you have other things like um, the whole Ben Shapiro group, who's
Mhm.
exactly the same thing. They have a huge following and they do nothing at the ground level.
It's all drama.
Where
Yeah.
you have on the other side, they do everything at the grassroots level.
Yep.
They have
Yeah.
organizations out the wazoo because they fund those efforts. You have these people over here who like to sit on their money and do absolutely nothing to save the country. I would give my last dollar if I thought that it would save the country. They do nothing but promote themselves and their brand. And it's
well,
disgusting.
I can't help but give you 100% credit because I worked with one of the local. I got really pissed at the government, and I'm going to go out there and help them. And they had these professional campaigners come into our county here and try to get. I think Vet Harold was the lady who was running at the time. No one liked her. She didn't have a snowball's chance of hell winning. They spent like $24 million to get this lady elected. And their technique of going into to get out the vote and all this stuff, I'm just like, all you're doing is pissing everyone off. You're going and you're antagonizing the people you want to vote for you, and you're making them upset. It's like you're saying you want to get out the vote, but your actions are an opposite of what you're trying to
Correct.
do. And then I stood up in the meeting out here and I'm like, if I'm gonna go and help you do this, or this is what your technique is, you let me know now so I won't waste my time. And you could drop a mic in the whole room. They could not believe that someone got up and told them what they were going to do and I already knew it. And, I've pissed, I was told never run for office in New Mexico. I'm toast. I was told that by the county. I'll never be in, I don't want to be, but it just,
So we're about an hour in. I
sorry.
don't know how much time you have left, Colonel.
About 30 minutes.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
There were a few questions I wanted to shoot at you, but
Thank you very much for that. You closed a lot of loops up for me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that was perfect.
It all makes sense.
Unless you want to expound on anything that you weren't able to touch on.
No, if you have questions, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I got it. So you one of them is, so I'm always about I'm a little less interested in individuals and there's certain exceptions. Obviously, I'm interested in factions because that's ultimately what it's like. People act out or live out operating system, like their operating system, their inner belief, right? So a part of it is, trying to figure out, is the faction backing the Trump play this? Is it for real? Who are they? Is there real? I mean, we see like some of the money. I mean, Adelson's famous for that. The Mercers are somewhere back there running around. But what do you make of the Trump faction?
So it depends on how you describe the faction.
I'd say the
If you're
big money.
Yeah.
So what I find most interesting about the donors is I think they spent their money thinking they could control him.
Yeah.
Right.
And you would never turn if you know yourself that no amount of money is going to make you deviate from what your agenda is, I'd take every penny of it because it's not going to change a damn thing I do.
Right.
And I think some of the things that he has said out loud in public, like over in Israel,
Mhm.
um, has been very interesting in calling them out to their face. So
Yeah, I know, it's been amazing.
No,
right. And so I think there so if you go back to probably the only analogy that we have or that I'm aware of, um, the Devil's Chessboard made me realize, although I already had this firmly planted in my head, but it confirmed it even better for me. There's so many analogies between JFK and the Trump administration as far as pursuing an agenda of peace and not constant war. And that peace agenda is what got him killed. And
Yeah.
we can talk about the who actually pulled the trigger and who coordinated the plan and all that other stuff, but there were a lot of people around the world and in the United States in the international syndicate that wanted him dead immediately. And so
Yeah.
when you pursue a peace agenda, the entire international syndicate is mobilized against you. Because they survive off of war. They survive off of chaos. Well, if you are not going to allow the chaos to exist and you are going to use the hammer in order to insist it stop, whether it's the drug trafficking funding it or the human trafficking funding it or the weapons trafficking funding it, he has attacked every element of that. And so I'm less concerned about who's funding him because it's not made a damn bit of difference in his
Yeah, I know.
approach to getting the
Yeah.
job.
Oh, yeah.
do you it's more of the other part of it is his physical or his security, both physical and information and, general security. How was that managed? Because how is he alive?
Well, he obviously has had issues with that.
Mhm.
Um, but you can't uh you can't leave out the divine piece of all of this. Um,
Yeah. I was
he
gonna go
is a
there too, yeah.
man that is divinely inspired in order to stop this whole Operation Gladio international syndicate hold on the world. And so that's number one. Number two, he does have private security and he does check out a whole lot of different things that um, I mean, I don't have inside knowledge into his personal security,
But
but
yeah.
it obviously is working, well enough other than Butler.
Yeah, are
That
there
was pretty
certain dead
close.
man switches, or maybe even certain factions in China and Russia have made some back channeled signals like, "Hey, if you cross this line, we know exactly who did it, and we will kill you." Like, because that's ultimately what EM says. Violence is the only real currency in the world. I love that. Like, that's true.
It
Like,
is.
it ultimately comes down to that. Um,
Well,
yeah. Well,
that
go ahead.
one of our favorite topics has been I'm a amateur marksmanship. I mean, I'm really into guns. And I've been since you've been bringing this up, I've been really thinking about that Charlie Kirk and what his movement was doing and how it's collapsed after he was taken out. And makes me wonder if he really was assassinated, like by the New World Order and all that stuff, like, or the syndicate. I like your term better, but it's really brought
This is
that
a
into
criminal
my.
syndicate.
Oh yeah, it fits very well. It's a very good. So
Yeah, it took me about 3 months to figure I went through several iterations of it. So if you look at the assassination of Charlie Kirk, so if you understand that controlling the culture is part of the agenda, um, cu- culture creates the mechanism in order for them to create the chaos. So in our history, obviously, you have race as one of the friction points, right?
Yeah.
So what they look to do, as a matter of fact, the CIA has an entire team that goes into countries that they're going to overthrow to survey the country, and they look for friction points, things that they can use as a wedge to divide people. Because the way you orchestrate regime changes is pitting people against each other. And
Yeah.
so you have it's the divide and conquer kind of strategy. So one of the mechanisms that they have perfected is infiltrating student um, entities. You know, the back in the day, the National Student Association was basically a CIA front. They've done this over time. And so, and around the world, not just in the United States, but the CIA actually infiltrated the one in the United States. Anybody that tells you they don't operate here is drinking something very strong. Um, so,
Yeah.
in the situation with Charlie Kirk, what he was doing is countering their monopoly of the college campus.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They have operated with impunity on our college campuses for decades.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, they're very bold about it too. If you go to some of the college campuses like Harvard, where Kissinger, when he left the government, went and set up an institution on Harvard that was literally funded by the CIA.
Okay.
And they used it as a recruitment tool, um, for people to come into the agency and be placed in other jobs. And when it was discovered in, I don't remember exactly the date that the first article was written about the CIA funding it, but it deactivates, and the deputy to Kissinger just moves over to a different building and sets up a new one. So the program that Mandami's dad came over on was funded by the CIA out of Kenya.
Mhm.
Oh
He's
man.
not
Oh,
from Kenya, he's from Africa, but it was funded by the CIA. He's a
And who's
product of the
who's
CIA.
his mom again? I forgot. Mandami.
Um, I don't know.
I
I
don't
don't
know.
remember.
She's tied into this somehow. I forgot.
Yes, she
Um.
is. But,
Okay.
I researched the dad because I had spent a lot of time on this particular program that was ran by a guy, in Kenya, because Obama's dad came to, the University of Hawaii on a West Coast version of that same program.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I
So, if
remember
you
reading about that. Yeah.
yeah, if you understand how, um, monopolistic, their control of college campuses were, Charlie Kirk was a big threat. And the the other side of that, just going back in history, there was a guy by the name of Fred Hampton who had been a Black Panther, who kind
Mhm.
of, in the '60s had decided that this was he kind of had an epiphany as to what the enemy really was, the international syndicate, and how they were playing people by race, how the Black were being used, um, as a weapon in order to keep this chaos going. So he created a thing called the Rainbow Coalition,
Okay.
and it
Yeah.
basically was all poor people, regardless of race. And they were going to fight and create a grassroots effort that we were just talking about across the entire country, educating people about this mechanism that is controlling us all. Well, the FBI broke into his house and murdered them all. So maybe that's the reason why they don't have grassroots efforts.
I always thought it was interesting too that when Malcolm X started speaking out about it, that he was
He's dead.
taken out as well.
Yeah,
Yeah. And then
yeah.
I was just watching a documentary with Robert Kennedy Jr., and he was saying that he got shown evidence that the CIA took out his dad.
They
And it's
did.
just like, yeah. Because like the security guard behind him, all the bullets came into the back, and they
That's
weren't
true.
22 bullets. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you go back and that's very, very important. That was in 1968, and he had basically just locked up winning California, the Democrat nomination to uh, go into the presidential election. And they could not have RFK in the White House. They couldn't. He knew too much. He knew
Yeah.
that the CIA had killed his brother. He knew where all his skeletons were buried. He knew the
Mm.
mafia was working with the CIA. He knew everything. There's no way that man was ever gonna get in the White House.
Yeah. Yeah.
Huh.
I for the longest time I read this book about the Kennedy assassination, and it kind of led me down the path that was kind of incompetence mixed with conspiracy. And
There was no
the
incompetence at all in JFK's assassination.
well, the thing that got me is I read about like the ballistics reports because I'm into guns, and I figured that like Oswald like got some shots in, but I also kind of figured that the Secret Service, there was like this theory that they came up and they tripped and shot him too. So,
So, we'll touch on this just real quickly.
oh, okay, I'm
Um,
sorry. Yeah.
no, that's fine. I'm not even sure Oswald, um, pulled pulled a trick. Um, there's in the Devil's Chessboard, it talks about having interviewed his roommate over in Russia for the couple of years he lived over there. He couldn't shoot the broadside of a barn. As a matter of fact, at one point, his roommate shot a rabbit for him because they would go out on hunts and he couldn't even shoot a rabbit. So I'm not sure he even shot a gun, but the most interesting element of his assassination was how it ties into Gladio. So they stayed behind unit throughout Europe, and not just excuse me, in NATO, not just in NATO though. All of the Scandinavian countries had stay behinds, and they weren't even in NATO at the time.
Hmm.
Okay, so they were in
Okay. Yeah.
Norway, Sweden, everywhere. So all of these countries have these stay behind units, and they're trained assassins. So, in the case of France, they had an entity called the OAS, and the OAS had skilled assassins that were deployed all over the world to assassinate people. There
Yeah.
were 2
Okay.
confirmed OAS agents in Dallas that day, and one of them was driven in the aftermath to the Mexican border by one of the Dallas police chiefs or
Oh.
police members. And approximately half of the Dallas police force belonged, I think the number was 488 military intelligence unit in Texas. So you had a lot of collaboration with the Dallas police in the assassination of JFK, and it's just like I was saying, if you don't have the mayor's brother was Dulles' deputy at the CIA.
Oh
If
man.
you don't have complicity at all of these multiple levels, then these operations don't work. And there was lots of complicity there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Allen
Yeah.
Dulles definitely had a lot of pull, and he was in it for such a long time. Even when he was out, he still had all the pull. He was, according to the book, he ran the CIA.
Afterwards.
Mhm.
Just like when Jimmy Carter, um, in the Halloween massacre, his first year in office, fired almost the entire covert, um, division of the CIA. Over 800 CIA agents were fired in the Halloween massacre. Did they go away permanently? No. if you do your research, you will find out that there's this thing called the Sahara Club that was set up where? In Kenya. And they basically, with Aiden Khashoggi, the weapons dealer that moved all of the illicit weapons around for Gladio, um, and a whole bunch of, Middle Easterners, and George H.W. Bush. So Jimmy Carter decided that Bush was not going to be kept on as the CIA director, and he was pissed. So all he did was like Allen Dulles. He just takes his operatives and they create a separate entity that operates as a shadow CIA when there's a director in there that they don't control. Plus, they still at the next level down, the next level down, and the next level down. Those people were all hired by the same complicit people. So just that's what Trump's dealing with right now. You may have Radcliffe and a good guy at the top, but the next layer from middle management up was all hired by the previous administration or promoted into those positions by the previous administration, all of which was part of this long term deep state infrastructure of obstructionists.
From Obama's time
Not just
forward, it
Obama,
seems like.
but I mean, even before that. There's no difference between George Bush, Clinton, Bush Senior, Reagan, none of them. They're all the same.
Yeah, they just flip it back and forth to make it look like there's a
Like we
change of
have a
power.
democracy.
Yeah. I've thought that for years. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think that when the Soviet Union fell, that it was kind of okay, well, like we understand the problem, or a faction took over, said, let's go into Prolea, let's go take a nap and kind of let this thing kind of come out. And then somebody had to long-term plan this out, is what it looks like. Especially now that Hamiltonian, what is it? The report on manufacturers, everyone's talking about Hamilton economics all of a sudden now, because it's kind of happening. Like I saw a year and a half ago, I'm like, are they really going for a Monroe Doctrine, like for real? And it looks like they are, and the world's being cordoned off into regions and civilizational powers guarding each of their blocks. The Russians and Chinese are, if this is true, which I believe it is, they're our greatest friends in this endeavor. Despite that, there's still rivalries, and like if they thought we were on our deathbed, they're obviously going to infiltrate and loot the corpse along with everyone else. They've learned British tactics just as good as we have.
So, your starting point was when the Soviet Union fell. Obviously, the controlled demolition of the Soviet Union was for the purpose of allowing Western oligarchs to go in and plunder their resources. If you go back and you look at Bill Broward and the Hermitage private equity with the money of Edmund Safra behind it, you will quickly realize that the whole Magnitsky Act and Magnitsky himself was a traitor to Russia, and he was working with Bill Broward in order to sell off all of the Russian resources to Western oligarchs through complicit Russian oligarchs. And the rise of Putin is what stopped all of that, and the arrest of Magnitsky was actually the saving of Russia, and Bill Broward is still pissed off about it, and you have all of Congress complicit in passing the Magnitsky Act when they, in fact, knew exactly what was going on. And it's not, it's worth noting that the money guy behind it, Edmund Safra, was killed in a fire while under the care of a nurse that was former Special Forces, Green Beret. So,
Damn.
yeah.
Wow.
Russia was able to survive the attack. They've tried several times of infiltrating Russia. They've tried putting stay-behind units in Russia through Ukraine. Um, and the destabilization around Russia with Georgia and all of the former stands and all of that other stuff, the CIA's been actively involved in all of them. Obviously, they overthrew Ukraine twice in 2004 and 2014 using the exact same tactics with the same brown shirts. Um, and the ability of Russia to sustain this long-term sanction and thrive under it is a testament to the country.
Yeah, they've never had a break. They had the czars to deal with, which I mean, the Romanovs weren't, probably as bad. I don't know. I've complicated. I'm not really sure. I don't want to go to down the Romanov track, but yeah, no, it was that, then Bolshevism, communism, and then sanctions, NATO dealing with that. They've never, ever since serfdom, like it's never stopped.
Allen
Right.
Dulles,
Well,
he tried to
and
take him out too.
so, and most people don't realize that it wasn't China basically has suffered the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Not only did they suffer the opium infiltration into China thanks to the Brits in bringing the Indian opium into China to begin with, in which they fought 2 wars, the Boxer Wars, and the UK beat them
Oh,
both times. And they gave up Shanghai initially into an international city, and then the Brits ended up with Hong Kong as a result of losing the second Boxer War. Um, you also have post World War II a perimeter attack on China. Most people don't realize that the Tibetans, which was basically a state in China, everybody wants to pretend like it was a separate country. It wasn't. And the CIA infiltrated Tibet. They took Tibetans out of Tibet. They brought them to Colorado, and they landed at a military base in Colorado Springs and tracked them up to the top of a mountain because it's a very cold
I
mountain.
know where. Isn't that
And
Camp Hill?
they trained them to be stay-behind units in Tibet. That is
I've been to
another
that.
version of Operation Gladio in Tibet. Not only that, but if you look into the history of the Uyghurs, which are Muslims in China, they were taken into Nepal and attended the same terrorist training camps and placed back into China to do exactly the same thing.
Yeah,
So
that
you have
story never made sense until you told me. I heard you say that. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
You gotta be kidding
And
me.
so you have the border of Nepal with hostile forces into China. You have the
Mhm.
Tibet area with hostile forces, all trained by the CIA, by the way. And then you have Taiwan, who for the 40 years Chiang Kai-shek was in charge, were launching constant attacks. I don't know if you know about 2 downed airmen that were held for 20 years. I don't remember their names off the top of my head, flying missions into China for Chiang Kai-shek. They were CIA. Downing was one of the guys' names. But yeah, they were held in China for 20 years because and Taiwan's not just one island. Taiwan actually consists of like 7.
Mhm.
And they had KMT military on all 7 of these islands constantly attacking China.
I have to say, I find it interesting you were talking about that because I've been to that military installation up in the Rockies. It's called Camp Hell. It's all torn down. It's where
Yeah,
and
it
they
was a
talk
former
about,
World War II base.
yeah, for the 10th Mountain Division. But when I would talk to people there, they were saying all the CIA was here. And they were talking about all the foreigners they brought in and trained and stuff. And I would talk, and
Tibetans.
now, yeah, but they didn't, that was just talking to the locals hanging out there for the night.
Well, the
And
reason
when you
why
said
we
that,
found out, the
oh,
way we found out is that they would fly him in the middle of the night, and they would leave in the middle of the night. Well, one of the aircraft broke, and dawn came, and you have all of these Tibetans out on the flight line, and everybody's like,
yeah.
"What the hell?"
Yeah.
That's how we found out that operation was going on. Poor
And
Yeah, I
man's.
just
what's interesting about using third, like, these from these poorer countries, they're cheap operatives.
They are
Giving them a
very cheap.
job, very cheap and effective. Yeah, it's genius.
Well,
wow,
go
that's
look at how many Colombians have been killed in Ukraine. So the entire drug war of where we were supposedly training Colombian national police and their military to fight drugs, except for the drugs just kept getting more and more and more and more. But they have 20,000 excess paramilitary people thanks to the billions of dollars we pumped into Colombia. And you know what they're used for? They're used for Operation Gladio to go around the world doing paramilitary bad things. And a lot of them was hired out to Ukraine. There's a lot of dead Colombians in Ukraine. You watch the death notices of non-citizens dying, there's always several Colombians in each announcement.
Hmm. So this is kind of like their pull. This is kind of where AM talks about Milvian Bridge, how it was a way to pull in the Praetorians and get them. And, I mean, you gotta create a kill box for your enemy if you're gonna kill them. So it's almost like, and they sometimes manifest, but the longer Ukraine goes on, the more they're gonna pull these, what he calls devil's legions in to, which everyone's got their own term, but
Yeah.
but then you're you're pulsing the system at the same time while they're still running their same play because they have to. They've burned their ships. It's going to
Yeah.
keep going.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, we're seeing where all these things are coming in from. And
Yeah.
okay, wow. I have two other really quick questions, but I don't want to take too much of your time.
No, go ahead.
Maybe we throw this out. One, have you ever talked to Joseph Farrell? I'm a huge fan.
I have not.
Okay.
I'm a
Have you?
fan too.
Yeah. How have you gotten into I mean, since you're studying rat lines, have you gotten into his wild theory, which is really fun? It's my favorite theory, probably. But what the Nazis were working on, or have you encountered any of that? Like, there's this myth or this urban legend of high technology, and I did pre-med and stuff. I was interested in college and physics and stuff like that. And I started getting deeper and deeper into particle physics and quantum. And I'm like, why is everyone sounding like they're a mad prophet in the desert? Like all these scientists that are logical thinkers, they're all talking about like God all of a sudden and this weird. Go
So are
ahead.
you talking about the Bell Project?
Yeah. Just how that ties into the whole UFO phenomenon and everything else,
So without going down the UFO trail, it's probably his book. I don't remember. I have like 4 or 5 of his books that I've read. There was a project called the Bell Project that was taken out of. It was originally in Czechoslovakia, and it was under German control, and it was taken out in a submarine to. I want to say it was Argentina, and it was put on an island in a big river, and they had an entire town of Germans built around this area. And there was a lieutenant colonel that in the Air Force that was like a brainiac that went down, and he came back with a report that said basically he didn't know what the hell it was. It didn't seem like it was anything big deal because he basically didn't understand it.
yeah.
And years later, he was interviewed and he said, "Yeah, I know what it is, and I can't believe they had it 20 years ago." So, there definitely was something going on, and he was not able to, he's passed away now, but he was not able to quantify what he thought it was totally capable of, but he suspected that it had something to do with an energy source of some type.
So have you heard of the Ripple project?
Not that I
It
don't
was
recall that
during
name.
when they were doing Starfish and they were, launching, doing nuclear tests in the atmosphere. They launched one of the last ones. It
When
was
they
under
were trying to disintegrate the Van Allen belts?
Just
I didn't
testing.
even know that. I mean, I
Yeah.
read that they were launching nuclear weapons into the Van Allen belt during the initial space program to try to figure out a way. I'm like, what? What did I just read? We're launching nuclear weapons into the Van Allen belt to see if we could get to the moon with people? Are you kidding me?
Yeah,
Really? I didn't.
Farrell talks about
Wow.
this, but he yeah, exactly. And he
Wow.
the
I
last
didn't. I
test
didn't know
in
that.
the Starfish, or one of the, it was called Project Ripple. It's open source. It was declassified, I think, like 34 years ago. The fallout from the last bomb, it was like the last few tests, was basically 0.01%, whereas before it was like 20, 30, 40, whatever. But then so that means they didn't have to do with a fission reaction to get that effect, which means they were able to, because the whole point of like getting that core detonation is a perfectly synchronized geometric implosion at a singular moment to create enough pressure to cause a fission reaction that cascades into the hydrogen fuel cell or the hydrogen bomb and creates that reaction. So apparently they figured out a way to get a nuclear type reaction without using a nuclear reaction per se, or maybe some like, anyway, look into it. Farrell talks about it. He has got some YouTube videos on it. It's very interesting, and it ties into this, I think, to some degree. But one last quick one, and this will be real fast. Have you ever encountered Douglas Gabriel's work either?
No.
Former Jesuit guy. Okay, never mind. That's it. That's all I got.
You know, I wanted to tell you, thank you. You've solved a lot of loose ends that I've come across in my travel. Because I was a commercial truck driver, I've traveled and seen a lot of stuff, and you've solved a lot of loose ends for me, at least. I can't speak for the other gentleman here, but that was. I hope you'll let it come back and let us
Oh, I
talk again.
absolutely will.
No,
Because
you've been a
I
lifesaver, and I've been praying for former military and people with like you that have that reputational experience, that have seen, felt, and touched these places. I mean, this is going to take probably, I mean, it's happening faster than I would have thought, the learning curve of people and how popular these things are getting. And I mean, this is the best countermeasure to this whole thing, is just
It
talking
is.
about it. And I mean, oh my god, they've got to realize like they can't stop it now. Like it's
Well,
yeah
getting
I will
my
say that they definitely try to, because given the material that we expose, we have really, really struggled to spread this word. Um, so if any of you people are on X, even reposting, I mean, we have so much material out there. Um, Come join our spaces and contribute. Come up and ask for a mic. We love hearing from everybody. But we definitely need help in spreading the word, because our
oh yeah.
account is so suppressed, it's not even funny.
Well, definitely we're gonna. I can't speak for the other guys, but I think I'm gonna definitely try to spread the word because it's just so linear and it makes sense. To me, it just you just. So I've been asking Colin. I'm like, I need to lay it out like a story. I can't put we haven't found how to link it all together, and you filled in so many gaps in my understanding in just such a small period of time that the the question I'll ask and then we'll end is where should I start reading on this? I mean, you've obviously read a lot, but where can I start to start gathering
The
this info?
number one book I recommend is Paul Williams' book called Operation Gladio. It was
Okay.
published in 2015. It is the place to start. If you don't like reading, if you go to my Rumble channel, called The Colonel's Corner, I have the entire book on. If you click on playlist and then just go down to Operation Gladio by Paul Williams, you can just hit play, 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 because
Oh,
basically I
cool.
tell you the whole story in the book. It was very early on. I know a lot more. That was like the first book I read on Operation Gladio. The
Okay.
second best book written on Operation Gladio is called NATO Secret Armies by Danielle Ganser. Um,
Okay.
And those are the two starting points to get a kind of a fundamental feel for what it actually is. And once you have that foundation, um, these are my infamous Gladio glasses.
Hmm.
It actually says Operation Gladio on them because we have a funny story that once you see the world through Operation Gladio and you understand the foundation, you will never see the world the same again.
Well, I think I have a challenge coin collection. And you have a challenge coin. I'm definitely going to go buy that. Um,
I do have a challenge coin. I have a
yeah,
Shopify, but if you go to my X page,
yeah,
and hit like see more, and then you have to hit see more again, there's a Shopify website there where I sell t-shirts. It just goes into our book fund.
yeah.
I've spent thousands and thousands of dollars in these shirts. As a matter of fact, one I want really bad is so censored. It's like the only version, there's only one on Amazon, and it's like $700.
Whoa.
So this has not been a cheap undertaking.
Yeah, it's I understand. But yeah, I'm gonna start researching this. Because I've just been researching World War II history because I'm just fascinated with it.
Yeah, and we
Living
did
here.
Danielle's Ganser's book too, so it's on the website. And we did Cynthia Chung's book as well. It's on there
Okay,
too. So you can listen to all of
and,
it.
and we're gonna put a link to all your guys' stuff. I will. I'll get it from Collin. Everything you want in the description, we'll definitely link it all there.
Cool.
Yeah,
And we're gonna try to
they can follow
disseminate as
you
best.
on X at Colonel Towner,
Yes.
TOWNER, and anywhere else audibly that just if you want to throw anything else out there. That
Yeah, the
people can-
Rumble is the Colonel's Corner, and I have a Substack as well. It's called the Colonel's Corner.
Oh, cool. We'll have links to all that in the description for you. Not a problem. But thank you very much. It's been
Yeah.
so enlightening to have you
Thank
come on tonight. I appreciate it.
Thanks for the invite.
Oh no, thanks for coming. That's way bigger than the invitation. So
Now, if you would
on the,
be so kind, don't exit right away. We may have to do
Sure.
some buffering here.
Sure.
all right. Well, you guys, thank you for what come to the rabbit hole tonight, and stand by for some more information later. We're definitely going to be diving into some new topics now. So
And
thank
we're
you
still
guys.
looking for that up to 10 people so that we can start raffling or getting a t-shirt out to someone.
But yeah, on our
So-
Patreon. Yes, that's right. Thank you for
Yep.
reminding me, Corey. I got a little
Oh, yeah.
excited.
So,
all right.
It's easy to do with this one. Yeah.
Oh yeah, man. 80 moments. All right. Thank you guys for watching. Appreciate it.